look at. We'll also look at some of the images, I hope, will come on the screen later on. And we want to hear Emma, and we want to hear Ran and Billy choose. They have both chosen their favourite poems. And if you haven't got a copy of the book yet, please do go to our website and get one, because it's a really lovely thing and quite special. So thank you all for showing up. And I have to apologise in advance that I will actually have to leave before the end, because I actually have another Zoom meeting before 9 o'clock. But it's lovely to be here, and I'm going to hand you over to Billy and to Ran and to Emma, who are going to entertain you and maybe make you think about new things or not. And you're all very welcome to ask questions, take part, but please do get the book if you don't have it, because it's truly wonderful. And Emma's a pretty special author for us. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Jane. Well, thank you so much, Jane. And thank you to Wild Goose Publishing for hosting us this evening to launch Emma's new book. As Jane said, I'm Billy. I work at Tearfund in the campaigns team. That's the bit of Tearfund that faces out to the UK church and says, come on, church, speak up, use your voice to tackle global poverty. And part of tackling global poverty has to be tackling climate change. We might talk a little bit more about that in a bit later, but I'm delighted to have been invited by Emma to be your host for this evening. Emma and I first became acquainted in the run-up to COP26 last year. You'll have probably noticed that there were climate talks in Glasgow, and we as Tearfund, we had a venue up in Glasgow for the 2 weeks, and we were able to exhibit the 40 paintings that are in this book. They were actually exhibited in person, physical copies of those paintings at St George's Tron Church, which is a fantastic venue. If you're ever in Glasgow, do pop along to their cafe there. It's absolutely brilliant. And so we loved having the paintings there. We saw so many people engaging with them and reading the poems. And so it's really brilliant to be here tonight for the launch of this book of the paintings. And also to let everyone know that proceeds from the book will be going to help people in climate vulnerable countries to adapt to and to cope with the impacts of climate change through Tearfund's work. So Emma's kindly donating money to Tearfund from the book, and she also donated money from the sale of the paintings. So that's part of the link between myself and Emma and Tearfund. I'll just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to be doing tonight, just so you've got a little bit of a shape of the evening, and then we'll get down to it. We're going to start with Emma and I and Ran, where he wants to, being in conversation together. I've got a few questions I'm going to ask Emma, but if you want to add questions, type them in the chat, and Ran will try and weave them into the conversation where he feels it's appropriate. So do join in the conversation by typing in your questions. Emma's then going to read a couple of poems. As Jane just mentioned, Ran and I have been privileged to choose one each, and she's going to read those and talk a little bit about the paintings that go with them. We'll then finally have a little bit more time for any questions we've not come to, unless we've got so many questions, in which case I can't promise we'll come to every single question, but we'll do our best. And we'll aim to wrap up by 8 o'clock at the latest, having had a hopefully very interesting and inspiring conversation. So that's the shape of the evening. And without further ado, I think I'll turn to you now, Emma. And it's just great to be here in conversation with you. I'm so looking forward to this conversation, I must admit, having, you know, had a chat the other day and thought about it a little bit. Now, I don't know how many people follow you on social media or know much about you, but your Facebook profile says that you are many things: mum, wife, pioneer minister, author, poet, blind wheelchair driver, blogger. I mean, this little bio just intrigued me so much. So, and I'm sure others would love to hear a little bit more. So I wondered if you could introduce yourself and just unpack any of those that you choose to, really.
Thanks, Billy. I can't tell you how nice it is having you and Ran and Jane and the team, because then I feel so supported and encouraged. So thank you to all of you, and for everybody for coming. It's very weird being on my own creating. I love that, and then suddenly meeting all these people. It's quite surreal. I think lots of creatives say that. So where should we start? I started that long list of who I am when way back when I started getting really active on the internet, which was when before my daughter was born, and I've just kept adding to the list because my life is a juggling act, and I love that. I think, like lots of creative people, I get bored easily. I'm not a great completer finisher. I've always got 100 tabs open in my head. I'm always creating something, and I'm not cool. I'm blind, so I can see a little bit, but I can't see any faces on the screen. And if you wave at me, I can't see you. And yeah, blind wheelchair user. Best thing to do if you see me is get out of my way, because you don't want flat feet. I try not to, but my husband's feet have grown since I've been using a wheelchair. So, but it doesn't stop me. I feel so blessed by God to have come through a very scary time of losing my sight and my mobility in a couple of months 7 years ago, and not knowing what was going to happen, and to have been given this gift of my life opening up creatively. And God just constantly blesses me with new opportunities and ideas. And I find the easiest way is just to follow that and see what happens. And sometimes we end up with a book launch.
Wow. I hadn't realised it was so recent, actually, you losing your sight. So you've had, I mean, that takes a lot of getting used to. It's one thing when people have that all their lives. It's certainly another to have that happen.
I mean, we all face challenges, don't we? I lost my sight literally. I got up from the sofa to go to bed. By the time I got to bed, I was blind. And it just happened. And yeah, I was told I wouldn't leave the house again. I believed that for a year. No, I believed it was 6 months, then got 6 months of counselling and haven't looked back.
Wow. I mean, this sounds like it should be a book in itself, really, how you adapted your life to that challenge.
Don't tempt me with another one, Billy.
The pioneer minister thing, what were you doing that before you lost your sight then?
Yeah, I was licensed by the Church of England as a licensed lay pioneer minister 10 years ago this year. So of course I knew I wasn't having a calling to the church until everybody told me I was. And then even then I was like, but I don't look like a minister. I don't feel like a minister. Everyone's surprised I want to be a minister. And I just kept saying to people, I just love people and care for people, want to be around them, share God's love for them. I've got a passion for social justice. And Bishop said, well, go on then, go do that.
Brilliant.
So a series of vicars have trusted me, and I've just kept doing that.
Fantastic. So are you linked to your local church that you go to and,
yes,
and do whatever God seems to be leading you to do? Or?
Yes, I mean, I'm part of St Nicholas Early, and I preach sometimes, at the moment all via video because I don't have the energy to get into church. I'm the crazy one with ideas, and I love the people in the church and can't imagine not being part of them. Been with them for 17 years. So.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the ideas behind the book then now, because you're somebody with ideas and then you just go and do them. And I'm so glad you reached out to us at Tearfund and said, I've got this artwork. I wonder if you'd be interested. But yeah, tell us a little bit about how the paintings came around and the poems as well. And I think Jane mentioned why you've launched the book now, but maybe you want to say a little bit more about that and why it's important.
So there are 40 paintings, and the reason there are 40 is because I was praying about the environment on the 40 days of Lent last year, and I made a decision. I always sit down at Lent and Advent and go, what am I going to give up, but what am I going to take up? And I caught COVID October 2020. It was really hairy, but I survived. But I've got long COVID, and I was really struggling in Lent, really struggling. But a friend had said, your creativity hasn't stopped. Have you thought about digital art? And I'd started playing, much as you play with fluid paint, in that way on my iPad. And so every day in Lent, I would pray for the environment. And while I was praying, I would throw down colours onto my iPad. I know that sounds crazy, but there are apps where you can literally throw colours onto canvas on your iPad. And then I would swirl them around while I was praying. And while that was happening, poems would come to me. I've written poetry since I was about 9 or 10. And then I just share them on social media, a painting and a poem. And, you know, this is my prayer for the day. And I came to Easter and went, oh, these kind of look similar to each other. These might be a series. There might be something in this. What's God saying to me?
Mm.
So I sent them to a couple of trusted friends who said, publishers, Emma, these need to be seen. These need to be shown. I didn't feel brave enough for that, but somebody said, well, let's show them in churches, let's print them, let's share them. And then Bishop Olivia, the Bishop of Reading, said, you know, these are bigger than that. We've got the Youth Christian Climate Network, YCCN.
Yes, YCCN were doing their pilgrimage, weren't they?
Well, they came through Reading.
Brilliant.
And so one minute I was like, this is nothing. And the next, they were being shown in the big minster in Reading with YCCN coming through and me reading poems. And then I said to Tearfund, look, if these could be useful to you, you can have them. And before I knew it, they were in Glasgow.
Yeah, St George's Tron. And actually the YCCN closing ceremony for the last day of their pilgrimage was also at St George's Tron, and your paintings were there.
Yeah.
So.
And that to me is God at work. I could never have sat down and made one of your amazing plans, Billy, and said, well, we'll do X and Y and Z. It just happened. And before I knew it,
that's what you need to do, isn't it? Go where the Spirit's leading. I'm a bit more intrigued about the process of making the art, and now I understand a little bit more, because before, I mean, I've not done one of these programs, you know, that you're talking about on a computer or iPad. So I would, but I have seen Grayson Perry using the paint thing on his computer on the program. But I'm also intrigued that, you know, you were suffering from long COVID and you sat down to pray about climate change. I take my hat off to you, because, you know, for so many people, as soon as they think about climate change, the energy sort of drains even further out of their being, because it's such a big issue that people sort of almost, they find it too overwhelming. So I'm interested to know about your prayer practice there and how that helps you when you're already in a state of low energy because of long COVID, but how you maintain energy and hope as you pray.
So prayer gives me energy. So not liturgical prayer, not reading prayer, but just being in a mindful type of prayer gives me energy. It's relaxing. God feeds me. And I've always been passionate about the climate. I went to Kenya I'm a civil engineer originally. So I went to Kenya for the first time when I was 19. I've been to Zambia. I love Africa. It breaks my heart that people I know and love are living with the effects of what we are doing in countries like the UK. And I can't just, it's always on my heart and I can't just ignore it. But when I'm praying about it or painting about it or writing about it, I was writing about it today, it's like God says, thank you, you've given that to me. And it's like a weight lifted. Does that make sense? So
that is just brilliant. I'm definitely thinking about trying this as a way to engage with a topic. Yeah. Oh, that sounds beautiful, Emma, that description of how your prayer.
And I am blessed because God has given me the ability to be creative and to still write in long COVID. Lots of people have had that cognitive part of their life stolen, whereas actually I still have that ability to be creative. Without that, I'm not sure what state I'd be in. So I thank God every day for that.
Yeah. So how do you envisage that people might use the book themselves, maybe in a devotional way, or, you know, obviously people can look at it and just enjoy it because it's
just enjoy it. My dad said it's a great coffee table book.
Yes.
So, well, being 40, I think it would be great for Lent and Advent. And with COP27 literally finishing the week before Advent, dare I say, get a copy of the book and spent Advent with one of the paintings each day, a poem, and there's a prayer and reflection for each. And
yeah, perhaps people could try making their own prayer response,
that would be amazing.
Or, you know, whether they would have a go at doing some art or whatever response. But yeah.
And I'm thinking I might share them each day, so people can share them online with me, and we can get some chat.
Oh, I love that idea. Yeah, that's a great idea, because you've been having a poetry kind of sharing thing on your social, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'm not a poet, I'm not much of a writer, so I must admit I haven't engaged with that, but how has that been going?
Yeah, I mean, wonderful. People have been engaging with it in all sorts of different ways, and people say, I can't write, I'm not a poet. If you can speak a sentence, I promise you, I promise you, no excuses. It can start with, dear God, inspire me with how I can help with climate issues. Amen. It's a poem.
Yes. You're very encouraging on that. Very encouraging. I'm noticing, I don't think we've had any questions in the chat yet. Come on, folks, this is your opportunity. You will need to actually type in if you've got a question buzzing around in your mind, but don't be shy. No question too small or too varied, really. Do feel free to put them in. But another thing I would love to ask you about, Emma, is I wanted to ask a little bit about art for social change. My heart as a campaigner is to bring change, of course. I want to, to see the world made fairer. And I want to influence those people with power to make the change. And I do think that art is a brilliant way to wake people up to an issue, whether they're the decision makers or whether they're just the general public. And it can also help those people for whom a policy document just wouldn't really, interest them. They might get interested if they see a piece of art on something that needs changing. And I was also thinking about how art also has a bit more of a heart connection when people see it. So maybe it will just engage them a bit more. But I was just wondering what thoughts you have on art and activism, whether you've done any other art activism, or whether there's any art activism that you really, admire that you can bring to mind.
Oh,
sorry, we haven't prepped this, but
that's 10 questions that could take 20 hours. All art is trying to communicate something. I think if art communicates with somebody, if it connects with somebody, then it is trying to communicate. And I also think it's not necessarily what we as artists want to, not just what we are trying to communicate, but what other people are receiving. It all goes through the filter, reads or looks. When I first had the art up at the exhibition, people at church said, can we have printings of the paintings? And I said, okay, I printed some out. Lots of people sent them to their MPs.
Oh, great.
I was like, that's an inspired idea.
Yeah.
Because the MP might actually look at it.
Yeah.
I all my poetry and all my writing is about different issues: mental health, disability, grief, a pandemic, you name it. I'm constantly writing, and it's about prayer. It's about getting things off. It's processing. It's mental processing, and then sharing and encouraging others to say, oh, I get that, or I don't get that, and I'm interested why you think that. Does that answer your question? I mean, and I love to see when other people join in.
Along lines, and Emma, Jeannie has just asked, how can she connect on social media? So maybe we can put that in the chat.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I can see that Jane has done that. She's put the Instagram in.
Wonderful.
You can find me all over the internet at EMMUK74. So if Jane's put that there,
yeah,
I'm even on TikTok, but nah, not very much.
Yeah.
Now I can see that Grace has asked, would Emma like to share one of her paintings and poems, please? We are coming to that, Grace. You are very, very on target for what our timings are. I'm going to ask Ran to share a little bit in a minute, because we've each got to choose, Ran and myself have got to choose one of the paintings and poems, and Emma's going to read those. So Ran, over to you. Which one have you chosen and why? And maybe you want to introduce yourself a little bit as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm Ran Nisbett, and I live in coastal Alabama. I'm an associate member of the Iona Community, and I'm the convener of the Common Concern Network for the Environment, which is a great group. There's a few of our members here today. I saw Jane and Fiona. And we gather about once a month. It's been by Zoom during COVID, but it's kind of a fellowship. We talk about our passions for the environment and a variety of activities we're engaged in, and we've been very involved in creating some prayers for the Iowa worship service, also doing a book called Living Faithfully in Creation Times, which was edited by Kathy Galloway and Catherine Preston, which was a series of collections of the clergy did lectionary reflections, and lay people kind of did lay reflections on their feelings about faith and environment. So it's a real interesting book that Wild Goose published. So basically, that's what brings me here. I'm very grateful to Wild Goose Publications for allowing me to participate in this, because I think that some of the work they do is so powerful and inspiring, and it deserves as broad a market as it can possibly get. So obviously then I'm excited that I got to meet Emma and have this powerful influence. Your story is very moving to me on so many different levels. So when I looked at the book, the artwork was absolutely stunning and beautiful. And as I said to an email to several of you, it was impossible to pick out one's favorite. It just doesn't work that way. But that also makes the task very, very easy, because anything you pick is really going to be inspiring and wonderful. So what I did was I took your advice, Emma. I looked at those. I said, I want to see how I feel about this. You know, so much about the environment is not facts. I mean, facts are important, but it's how we feel, how we relate, how we connect to others and to the rest of creation. So I decided I would just go through very slowly and say which one really speaks to me. And of course, several did. It was a cacophony of sound. But the point is, I picked up one of those, and one of those was this page 46. And the painting really spoke to me. And then what you wrote about it was really kind of amazing, because I'm a biological anthropologist. So one of the things that we study is the genetic relatedness of different people and how we relate, and in fact, how genetically related we all are to one another. There's virtually no difference at the genetic level between most humans. So I found out that was kind of what the theme was of this one. So it was just really kind of, I feel like I was kind of led to that painting. So tell me a little bit about that and how you wrote it and what you were thinking, and the poetry is really quite lovely.
Shall I read the poem as the
yes, please.
Up on the screen? So let me read that. And these are haiku poems, by the way. So they are 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. So across the planet, let differences drop away. One human species. It's always been a huge deal for me that we are not different. We should not be separated. We should not carve up the world and try and solve things in silos. We need to think bigger and together and better. As I was painting this, I put blobs of yellow and blue and purple and orange in different parts of my canvas, as if they were separated. And then I started connecting them with paint strokes, thinking about how we are connected as species. We're connected by our water, by our air, by our resources, by our prayers. And this is what came about. And to me, there's something about the dynamics of movement and how we need to realize that everything is flowing and connected. Mm-hmm. Is that helpful?
That's wonderful. Yes, exactly. It's interesting how that process, even as you were describing the process of creating the art, I was starting to get it and say, oh, that's really interesting. But now when you describe it with this particular one, I can see how you can impose what you're feeling what your muse, what your God is telling you onto the actual artwork itself. So it's a really active process, isn't it?
Totally. So the purple is the well-to-do, the rich parts of the world. The orange are those who have very little resources, very little power, and are hugely impacted. And I keep moving the paint until at some point I go, oh yes,
that works.
That's what it's meant. Well, not it works, because with my vision I can see very little of it. It's when it's a sense of that's what it's meant to be. And then I start seeing things in it. So it's worth saying my little bit of vision means that I can see this painting only in 1% chunks at a time. So I never see the whole thing. So I see it really differently than you might. So I'm always fascinated in what other people see.
Wow.
Is there a bit of the painting that speaks to you, Ram?
I think over towards the left side of it, where the lines become very thin, and you mentioned the orange color, but the lines become thinner and more meshed. And I think that at first you're drawn to the purple, of course, but then it was really the complexity and the merging, at least as far as walking alongside, one color walking alongside the other one, in that part of it that really kind of grabbed me.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. It's really wonderful to hear that.
Yeah.
Wow, that was brilliant. So I've got the privilege of choosing painting next, and I've chosen the last one in the book, but it's also the one that's on the front cover for anybody who's already got the book. And there was, again, so many that I could have chosen. And I know when people were buying standing thinking, am I going to buy a painting? I think it was almost, there was too many that they could have chosen, and they were struggling to make that decision in Glasgow. But this one speaks about surrounding the world leaders in prayer, and I wanted to choose something that would speak about hope in the situation, because the climate emergency is very bad when you think about the impacts it's having on our global neighbours, and on the planet, on all the other parts of creation, the creatures, the plants, and all of that. So it's very often, I find it all too easy to get a little bit bogged down in the seriousness of it. And so I wanted something that had hope and sort of a feeling that we can do something about this. And at Tearfund, we definitely, see the need to influence world leaders. And in fact, we do have a campaign at the moment that I'd love folks on the call to sign, and I might put that in the chat in just a few minutes. And we encourage people to use their voice for climate justice, and prayer, of course, is part of that. And I loved your description of prayer, and surrounding the world leaders with prayer seemed such a hopeful thing. So that's why I chose this painting. But now I'd love to hear the poem read by you, and then what you were thinking of when you made this painting.
Excellent. This is the first painting, and yes, it felt right to be the last painting. So the poem: care for creation, a task for every nation. Together, let's act. It's like a cry for hope. I just want to shout sometimes, why aren't you taking this seriously?
I'm with you on that front.
And I was glued to the TV all through COP26, listening to especially the smaller island nations, and I was crying, because there are nations who are acting, doing everything they can, and are just begging countries like our own, like the US, like China, to just do a little bit more in the grand scheme of things. And this painting, to me, it's the world covered with the cross. Yeah. So the hope that that everyone will realize we are blessed with this planet. We are gifted the planet. It's not ours to abuse, it's ours to care for. We're meant to be the gardeners. We're meant to look after every animal. I'm lecturing you now, sorry. I just feel so passionate about it. And I know everyone on this call feels the same. I often think, what would Jesus have said if he was at COP26? And I think he just stood there and gone, are you kidding? Will you just, he'd be turning over the tables and saying, just do it. Just stop messing about. And this, to me, is the power of the cross with the delicacy of the planet and showing the fragmentation, but also showing that hope of us starting to come together and starting to move. And it's my prayer from the start to the end.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I absolutely love that.
Emma, Morris mentioned or asked, does anybody know of other Christians making public art as climate action? And then Jane has given us a lot of different links here. But do you know of a group? Are you active with others, Christians doing art for the purpose of climate action?
It's something that we are all starting to talk about. So Green Christians have got a part on their website where they're pulling together visual art. I think it's everyone's realizing that the arts have always been at the front of big change, of social commentary. And so slowly everyone's trying to come together. But I mean, honestly, if you look at any of the art that's being produced at the moment, even, you know, National Gallery, the Royal Academy art, they're all talking about social justice and the environment and improving the way the world works.
That's good. At COP26, we did have some great artists there alongside Emma's work. Even at St George's Tron, we had an artist called I.D. Campbell, who actually is a member of St George's Tron Church and somebody who Tearfund had taken on a trip to Nepal. So he had actually seen firsthand people who were affected by the impacts of climate change and who were being pushed back into poverty. And so we, Tearfund, were able to say to him, we'd like to commission you to do a portrait of one of the people you met in Nepal. But we also asked Christian Aid to supply a photograph and Islamic Relief to supply a photograph of people that they were working with in those sort of communities. And so Ian, I.D. Campbell is but his name is Ian, he painted 3 portraits of the 3 different people, the chap that he met in Nepal and then 2 others. And then those portraits were actually hosted at the Kelvin Grove Art Museum in Glasgow, and Songs of Praise came along to film him actually dipping them into black paint, which was representative of oil, fossil fuels, and sort of ruining the portrait because the people were covered sort of up to their noses in black paint. Suddenly the portraits disappeared. And then we actually exhibited those paintings in St George's Tron as well, and the mosque had them for a while, and they went somewhere else for a while during the COP. But yeah, that was a good example of an artist using their skills, but also making it into an actual sort of quite an event, which then got on national television. So yeah, there are artists who are using, and they're Christians. Ian is a Christian. And has painted some brilliant stuff from Luke's Gospel as well, Bible Society. So I will find the link for him and put him in the chat. And also at COP, there was various other things. One lady who was with, I think she was with Christian Climate Action. It was definitely a lady in a dog collar who seemed to be organising everybody anyway. They had made this amazing coat called the Coat of Hopes. And they walked up from Lewes in Sussex all the way to Glasgow, picking up various different people along the way, taking it in turns to wear this coat. And everywhere they went, people had made little patches about the things that they were concerned about to do with the environment. And they sewed them on. And this coat was so beautiful when it arrived in Glasgow. It really was. It was like a great big sort of greatcoat covered in lots of little patches that people had embroidered. And then every day they took it down to the conference where all the delegations were meeting, and they stood outside and they had a song that went with it. I mean, Google Coat of Hopes at COP26 and you will see this amazing art that was embodied. You know, someone was wearing the coat and they offered parliamentarians, delegation people, the opportunity to wear this coat and feel and carry the weight of people's hopes. And again, it was such a personal and it was beautiful to look at, but it was also very evocative and such a brilliant way to use art. So yeah, there are plenty of Christians using art to try and get these messages across. Okay, any other questions, Ran, that you've got for us from the chat?
I don't see one specifically. Let me scroll through these. I don't see one specifically that jumps out right now.
Sorry, I could see that there were new messages and I thought, oh, I might be talking too much. It was Melanie Nazareth was one of the people who was wearing the coat of hopes and walking with the coat. Yeah. There was a lady called Barbara who was the artist who came up with the coat. I can't remember her surname, I'm afraid. But again, we had the coat. We looked after the coat in the evenings when they weren't using it during the day, and we had it on display in our venue. So we will be posting the recording. Oh, that's not somebody asking a question. That's Jane telling us. Sorry. Great. Well, if anybody else has got
Jane looks like she's speaking to me. She's moving her hands.
Anita's got her hand up. Anita, would you like to say a question rather than?
Yes.
Please do. I'm
partially sighted, so tip tapping, I'm probably going to get it all wrong. Many people feel, the many people that I speak to feel that it's such a big issue that it's simpler just to stick their head under the pillow and do nothing. And I think one of the messages that we could be giving to people, and I always try to give out, is that even if you just do one thing and get used to that for a week or so, and do another thing, and then do another thing, and then another thing, and another thing, just do a little thing, even if you feel it's too big, you know, but just try and do something. Even a tiny thing, and then add to that and add to that and add to that, and suddenly you find you're doing quite a lot, and approach it from different angles. So we may be artists, you know, I paint with Emma, and it's never occurred to me to paint for climate change, even though well, as Emma knows, I've given some paintings for something else, for phone credits for refugees, I think it is, isn't it, Emma? Yeah. But you know, there's no reason why I shouldn't do it for something else. But I'm also in a group for gardeners, and they are a lot of them are very, very into climate change and looking after the climate, even though they're looking after their gardens, and they're going over to no mow and to letting weeds grow in their gardens, and realizing that they're actually flowers, not killing the slugs and the snails and all the rest of it like that, actually trying to look after it as a whole planet. But we come from different angles, and we all have our own way of doing things, because we are different, we're individuals. So the gardeners may look at it in one way, and the, you know, artists may look at it in another way. We may have gardeners or artists, but we having a respect for the way other people look at things is very, we need to be mindful. I think
that's a really great point, Anita, that if we can just all do those small little steps, and then some more, and then some more.
That's right, and work together and encourage each other, as well as doing the big things, because little things aren't enough at the moment. We do need to do.
So I think that's where then, if we come together, as you said, and as the church, you know, we're the world's biggest civil society organisation, the church. So if all the church pulled together and did lots of little steps, it would make an enormous difference. And of course, we do need world leaders and businesses to play their part, but they will respond when their voters and their customers are asking them to. And when there's lots of their voters and lots of their customers saying, this is really important to us, hey presto, the government and the businesses start acting. So that, you know, we've got to get this big movement of people, and that's where the church is bringing to that. I'm going to put in the chat our latest petition, where we're asking people to sign this petition about climate finance. We're asking our government, because our government's still the presidents of COP all the way through until the next COP, COP27. And so they have this leadership role. in the world during this year on climate change. And so we're asking the British government to lead well, and particularly to push the wealthy nations to fulfill the promises that they've already made. They made these promises back in 2009, and they're supposed to be fulfilling them on climate finance in 2020. I'm afraid we're not quite there yet. So we're like, come on, get this across the line. So we'd love to have people signing that. That's a small, simple action you can take. But when thousands of us take that action together, it enables our policy team to get their foot in the door at number 10 and to have those tricky conversations and to really push the government to take action. So yeah,
so getting people on board rather than switching them off.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I
think them realise that their little actions can make a difference. Go on, Emma.
Well, and I think that's where art can help as well, because it's coming at a different angle. Thank you so much, Anita, because yeah, she's a wise woman. You know, coming at it from a different angle, allowing people to appreciate the art. I want to share something that happened when these paintings were first exhibited in Reading. They were on a rolling loop on a screen in the Minster, and we launched them one evening, and that evening the church is open for the homeless in Reading to come and get warm and dry, have something to eat and drink. And the verger was just out the back, and he came back and the church was absolutely silent as all these homeless guys, and it was all guys, were sat there watching the paintings go around.
Wow.
And started talking and started asking. And for the first time, the verger had realised the power of art.
Yeah.
To make people stop and look and think. And we have to go about this in lots and lots of different ways. And the way I've broken the book down is there's the science, what is the reality of it, what needs doing, and then how we can act. So it journeys through, I hope, from we have a major problem to there is lots of hope.
Yeah, I think it definitely.
Oh, look, they're on the screen.
They're on the screen. Before we went to, I can't see now, but I think Christopher had his hand up. So Christopher, if you would like to unmute and ask your question to Emma, that would be fab.
We were talking about people doing little things, and it's all adding together.
Yeah.
We were visiting our daughter in New Jersey, and we found a milk carton, and it had this motto: teamwork is great. Look at Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is nothing but a lot of little drips working together.
Absolutely right.
Christopher, while we have you there, you wrote a very interesting comment into the chat. And would you like for me to read that, or would you like to pose that question to us? It's a little bit off on another tangent, but it's really very interesting from the historical perspective.
Yeah, you read it.
Okay, let me see if I can. Okay, here it is. On Radio 4 Sunday program, we were told that St. Wilfrid is being celebrated at Ripon Cathedral. He was the protagonist of the Roman party at the Synod of Whitby's of 664, saddling the church for centuries with anthropocentric priorities, overruling the Celtic conviction of interdependence of creation. How can we get Wilfrid reassessed?
Yeah.
I have no answer.
It's a really important point. I love Forest Church. I love Celtic Christianity. I mean, it's no surprise. I'm a member of Iona Community. And it's so, yes, it became all human focused, whereas actually all the way through the Bible is its connection with nature, it's caring for nature.
I have a friend on this side who is a retired ordained minister, and he has a T-shirt that I think it says, "Revoke the Synod of Whitby," or something. T-shirts and start conversations. I don't know.
It's a pretty niche one, isn't it? Yeah, but we'll start conversations.
Iona, do you have all of the paintings at your fingertips?
If there's any specific one you wish, I can get it. I don't have all of them currently on the PowerPoint being flipped through.
Well, because it seems I've got a little bit of time. I'd like to share the one that gives me the most hope. It's the penultimate, not the last one, the one before that. Long COVID has stolen my ability to find words, honestly. The reason this painting's really important for me is because I had heard a lot of people saying, well, young people don't care, well, the next generation needs to care. And I have a 16-year-old, and I know that's an absolute fallacy. And then you look at Greta Thunberg, and then you look at all the youth that went to COP26, and I speak to my friends, and it's like, oh, I'm getting better at recycling because my teenagers won't allow me not to. And, you know, all of this. And this, I was thinking about all that when I painted this. And the painting itself it's got two layers. So it's got the swirling of colour, but then I went over it in a white line. I hope you'll be able to see it. It took hours and hours and hours. I spent an entire day thanking God for the way young people are engaged and are making a difference and are helping us as parents and grandparents to make the small changes, knowing that it is worth it. And the poem for this is, you make me believe there is hope for the future. You will change the world. And I absolutely believe that. I hold on to it. Every young person I speak to, it's not an option. Dealing with climate change is just throughout everything that they are and the way they live. And I think one of the ways that we can encourage churches and communities to engage is to speak to the young people and say, can you teach us a bit more about how we can make a difference?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I love the fact that you had your paintings up with the Young Christian Climate Network's pilgrimage as well.
Well, they just inspire me. I mean, I don't know if Chloe's on the call, but Chloe is a climate scientist at Reading University. And from the first day I met her, she just blew my mind. It's in every part of her faith and her life and her studies and her. That's where the hope is. And she and people like her will be top of science projects, top of business, in politics, and change will happen.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, well, we're just about to start coming into land. Emma, I have so enjoyed this conversation, and I've really loved hearing a bit more about your creative process, or your prayer process. I'm absolutely blown away by that. Really appreciated hearing you share that, and then the fact that you then shared those paintings and poems with all of us is just beautiful, because in some ways it could easily have just been your own quiet devotion, and yet no, you've actually shared it with us, and I think it's very, very inspiring. So thank you so much, and thank you again from Tearfund for sharing these paintings with us, and then also sharing the proceeds to make life better for people who are already badly affected by climate change. So we want to thank you from the bottom of our heart, and we look forward to, you know, ongoing working together.
Absolutely. My thanks go to you, Billy, to Tearfund, to Iona, to Wild Goose, for taking this, just my little bit of creativity, and making it this. It is amazing. I feel really blessed to be able to take just my little bit and hopefully make a difference.
You are making a difference for sure. Also want to say thank you to Ran coming and joining us. Ran, we haven't had very much chance to hear about the environment network that you run, but if people are interested in joining that or hearing more from Ran about that, then I think his email address is going to go into the chat from Iona, so do contact him. Thank you everyone who's come along tonight. Thank you so much for coming and supporting the book launch. We've enjoyed your company. Thank you for your questions, and thank you for listening. We'd love to keep walking further with you on this climate justice journey, all of us. So I think Emma's various social media details have been going. Obviously, in the chat. Do follow her, do connect with her. Please do buy the book, do buy it as a present for somebody. Do let other people know about the book and let them watch this recording later if they're interested. And on Tearfund's side of things, again, Tearfund would love to connect with you further. We'd love to hopefully inspire you, put resources in your hand for your churches, because part of our heart is very much to resource churches so that they can speak up about climate change and global poverty. For example, I send out a monthly email that has lots of resources in it, and so I'd love to put that into your inboxes if you'd like it. Just connect with me on the email address that Iona will be putting in the chat. Yeah, thank you so much to Iona for running the call and doing all the behind the scenes tech stuff. We couldn't have done it without you, Iona. We really appreciate that. So if any of this stuff that's in the chat interests you, maybe just copy and paste it now somewhere so that you've got Emma's details, my details, and Rand's details, and anything else that interested you in there, because we will be leaving off in just a minute. Iona, the recording will be on the Iona Community YouTube
on the Iona Community YouTube page. The link will be shared elsewhere, I'm sure, and I'm sure Emma will have the link shared on all her socials.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just keep an eye out.
So you can always watch this back and find those links again, I'm sure, although I'm not sure if the chat appears on a YouTube once it's, no, it probably doesn't. So copy and paste.
Links go in the description of the YouTube video.
Iona's on it. So there will be, if you can't find those things, I'm sure you'll be able to look on there, or even contact somebody that you do know on this call and say, I have decided I would like to join Rand's Environment Network. How do I get in touch with him? I'm sure you'll be able to find out that information. But do keep following Emma and do get yourself a copy of this book. And I, for one, will definitely be looking to spend some time in prayer using that book to inspire me. And Emma's description of the way she prays has really blessed me tonight. So that's it, folks.
Thank you, Billy. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We've loved being together tonight.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.